This is going to be a quick document analysis review to help you with the challenge that we have in front of you. A trucking company has had a catastrophic event occur and has put more than one person's job on the line. And they've had a mix-up in orders and they need to resolve it quickly. One of their best foremen, Jim Richards, had placed an order that was meant to be delivered to Dayton, Ohio. Jim placed the order on Frank Johnson's desk, head of shipping. When Frank entered his office, he found several orders all appearing to be for the same Ohio shipment with different values or numbers for the orders. It appears that other workers here at Trucking Corporation have underhandedly created multiple orders. Through the confusion, the order was unable to be put through to Ohio. They have no time to spare. They need to know which order is the correct order and fast. The problem is that Jim Richards left for vacation and all of the suspected truckers have had issues with Jim, are out on the road, and they're unable to be contacted. The only information that they have is a grocery list that they found on Jim's desk. Asking Ohio for what the order would have been is out of the question. That's embarrassing, and they would for surely lose their business. So, in your lab, you have a bunch of different letters, and some of them are on the side. And they all appear to be very, very similar, but with different order numbers. Okay? So let's quickly talk about the things that you've learned and things that you need to apply to this today. So first off, here is that grocery list. That's the only thing you have to go off of. Notice, please, that there are letters and there are some numbers, and that's going to really be helpful for you. Here's two examples of some of the letters. So for example, this one ordered 250 paper rolls. This one was 2,500 paper rolls, so that's a big difference. Okay, so you're going to have to figure that out, and I will go through that with you momentarily. Reminder, there are 12 characteristics of handwriting that you can look at, and you got these notes the other day. There's line quality. Are they smooth, shaky, nervous, juvenile, deliberate? Okay, so when you're trying to mimic someone else's writing, a lot of times this can show up in different forms as well. All right, you're trying to duplicate someone else's writing. Now all of a sudden you might have a shaky or deliberate handwriting. Besides the fact that if it's your normal handwriting, which it might be different than someone else's. There's spacing from the margins to between letters and words. Okay, spacing is a big deal, so look for that. Size and proportion. Certain times we trail off, especially when you're copying something. Different letters in comparison to each other, that is an important thing. Pen lifts. Sometimes we drag our pen. Sometimes there are little extra dots or ink that exists or doesn't exist. Those are important. Connecting strokes. These are pretty obvious to see. Ending and beginning strokes, if there is such a thing in your exemplar. Unusual letter formations. Pen pressure. Are you writing heavy or light with your pen? Slant. A lot of times, are you right-handed? Are you left-handed? That's kind of a big deal, clearly. Also, when people try to disguise their writing, they somehow sometimes hide their slant, or their slant gives them away. Baseline. Are you writing on a line? If you imagine there's a line there, do you go above it? Do you go below it? So there's a consistency usually in that in people's writings. Obviously, fancy writing strokes. If there's an unusual letter, that is very helpful. And then finally, placement of diacritics. That's how you dot your I's and how you cross your T's. We have more unique styles to that than you think. Unfortunately, not everyone's going to be putting a heart above their I's, but that might help. So let's talk about our lab. There are kinds of forgeries that are going to help you with your lab. There are three kinds. Freehand simulation. So what that means, if you're doing something freehand, you're doing it on your own. So what you would basically do is you are going to be looking at your example and then trying to mimic it. Tracing is where you, sounds exactly what it is, you put it over the top of your example, or again we call it an exemplar, and you trace over it and you're trying to copy it exactly. And then there's normal hand, where you are truly just writing what you want to write, but you are representing it as someone else's writing. Like you are saying, sincerely, John Doe. So let's quickly Just read what this is. Freehand, an attempt to draw the signature or writing of another person, usually when working with a model signature, requires the same speed as the original, imitation of the letter formations, height ratio, and pen pressure. So you're trying to mimic it, but you're just looking at it and you're mimicking your example. Okay. Results, usually it's patchy and touchy. It's usually pretty easy to spot. Tracing. That's where you are going to take your signature writing and you're going to literally write right over it. Usually the line quality is very poor because you are trying to trace right on top, and line quality does not usually appear to be smooth. Okay. Final, normal hand forgery. These are the easiest to spot. You do not even attempt to mimic what the victim is writing. They're writing their name, but that's it. Otherwise, it's in the other person's own writing style. Okay, so I have one example here. This is in your lab. This is number 3, and unfortunately I'm going to give this one away, but that's okay. Looking at the grocery list on the right, that's the writing of Jim Richards, and we get sample number 3. Okay, so first in the lower left on your samples, you're going to identify if it's a forgery or not. So what you need to probably do is go through all 12 examples and find which one is the real one. So this one's clearly a forgery. And the reason why is if you look at the writing, it's all in upper and lower case. And if you look at the grocery list, it is all uppercase. So this is truly a freehand. Sorry, this is a normal hand. I made a mistake. This is a normal hand. I should have circled N. Because what I am doing is I am literally just, this example is just writing in their own hand style. They're not trying to mimic it. So please, that is a normal hand forgery. So you got normal hand, N, freehand where you're trying to mimic it but you're not tracing it, and then T, tracing, where they actually put it over the top and try to trace it exactly. So that's why you need to figure out which one you think is the real one first. Look for specific letters in the grocery list. What letters and numbers stand out? That's how you're going to do this. So before you guys have a bunch of questions and start to get frustrated, please look at the grocery list. But there's a couple that I wrote here. So for example, unique letter I. The I is very different, like in milk and in list. Here, this person actually put the I with a top and a bottom to it. There's another one, the N. If you look at the N's in the grocery list, there's a rounding in napkin, for example. N's look very specific. Okay, so that, I thought, you still got to find, you can't just say, oh, this is because of lowercase. You got to point out, I said minimum of 5. Speaking of 5, the 5 there looks very different than the 5 in 5 pizzas. And I only did 4, you're supposed to do 5. The diacritic on T, how they cross their T's. They cross their T's in the top. This person crossed their T's in the middle. So those are some of the examples that I wanted to point out. And this is what you're going to do. You need to do at least 5 things on every single letter, and you're using the 12 qualities. So you could also, on the left side for the reasons, write line spacing, ratio of heights, connecting strokes, slant, pen pressure, whatever you think is appropriate. If you can't be specific that way, then be specific on the letter or the number that you're trying to talk about. And that is what we are asking you to do. So go through all 12 and figure out which one is the real letter. Really analyze the grocery list, please, and then start to identify. Then you have a Postlab. And the Postlab is meant to be is just identifying between the 12. So for example, let's just look at number 2. It says, in your opinion, which document is the original? You're going to circle 1 through 12. So 3 is for surely not the answer. Number 3, which documents do you believe are the results of tracing? So you'll circle all the documents 1 through 12 that you think were tracing. 4, all the documents that you think were normal hand, which means the one that we saw, that they just wrote in their own handwriting and they did not try to mimic it. And then freehand, where they tried to mimic the writing, but they did not trace it. Then, starting at number 6, these are some of the characteristics of handwriting, and which forged documents can be identified solely on their line quality. Maybe there's none, so then you'd write not available. If you think that number 2 and number 11 had really bad line quality or different kind of line quality, then you'd circle those. Number 7, spacing of words and letters. If you thought that number 6 had different spacings of letters and words compared to the original, then that's what you do. So that's how we're asking you to finish the Postlab. Good luck. Let us know if you have any questions.